It's Gina Gardner here, and I'm very pleased to be joined, as normal on these genuine chats, by my good friend Rachel Davidson. Both of us are international best-selling authors.
Yes, we are.
Rachel has written The Point of Me, a spiritual novel, and number two is almost there, isn't it? Number two being titled
The Truth of Her.
So I'm intrigued. I am going to get an opportunity to read this before all of you. I'm going to get a proof copy, and I'm taking it away with me next week. So I'm really looking forward to that. I've written a number of books. I've got 2 international bestsellers: Chariots on Fire, and the latest one, Thriving Not Surviving: The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment. It's Mother's Day on a Sunday.
It is in the UK, yeah.
And it seemed a really good time to talk about motherhood.
Yeah.
And what we mean by mothering. And this came out of a conversation when we were talking about whether people were motherly and nurturing, and what that actually means.
Yeah, because that conversation was actually not referring to a parent-child relationship.
Not at all, no.
Referring to a work colleagues relationship. And the comments of the woman have been, well, you're not very maternal, as a way of sort of explaining the female's approach to managing this behaviour versus the other party's approach as a man to managing it. So it's quite an interesting phrase, wasn't it, to have the woman here, well, you're not very maternal. And for instance, would you ever describe a man in the same situation as, well, you're not very paternal?
Well, I think it's interesting because we, as a society, we give certain characteristics, don't we? That if you're talking about being maternal, then generally speaking, we're talking about nurturing, being gentle, being kind, being patient. Yes. And I think one of the things for me is, if I think back to my years as a head teacher, how that somehow got caught up with being a doormat or letting people get away with things that are not right.
Yeah, putting other people before oneself is considered to be well, there are definitely pieces of society that consider that is the ultimate you can do it, to be a good mother, is to put the whole family before you, and then possibly even to go on into other areas of your life, putting everybody before you and justifying it as, oh, well, I'm maternal.
Now, I believe that motherhood is one of the most important roles in life, and I think it's really important that I state that right from the beginning. I don't have children of my own, but when I was at school, I had 500 children who I felt were mine.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that I had a very maternal view of nurturing and helping these children to grow. But I think my definition of being maternal was very different to many people's, in the sense that I felt that I needed to create the conditions for children to be safe, secure, happy, learning, but to grow. And in order to grow, there needs to be an opportunity for people to try things out, make mistakes within a safe environment, and to challenge them to be the best they can be. But I think sometimes it's become very almost Disney-fied, that that it's very two-dimensional. That to be a good mother, then everything has to be perfect. And I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago who's a relatively new mum, first baby. Inevitably, lots and lots of anxieties about, am I doing it right? Are they still breathing? Will I drop them? Will they break? And I was having the conversation with her and saying, there is no manual.
Certainly isn't.
And it's not as if you have more than one child that you can treat them the same, because they're all very different. What you can do is your very best, and nobody can expect any more from you. And there's a difference, isn't there, when when children are tiny babies, when you are their only source of survival,
yes,
that of course they have to come first. They
yes,
absolutely, their needs are paramount, aren't they?
yes.
But even within that, there'll be those mothers who say, as soon as they squeak, you have to pick them up. And others who say, well, if they're dry and fed and you know they're not ill, then letting them cry is not a problem. And I'm not making a judgment.
No,
it's for each mother to decide what they want to do.
Absolutely.
But I'd like to fast forward, really, to as children become more independent. I think there is a danger that mothering style of doing everything for them continues.
I think there's definite danger and pressure within society. I mean, not to get too sort of, generalistic about it, but generally speaking, girls are brought up to be nice and polite and to, to fulfil that role in society of the nurturer, the this, the that, and the other. And you can get into a lot of sort of gender debates about whether that's actually real, because there was a news report recently, wasn't there, this week actually, the first female soldier has passed one of the toughest infantry, and she's actually passed, done it. There's been lots of women who have taken part in this particular test that you have to do in order to get accepted to the particular regiment, and she's the first one to actually succeed in doing it. So, and it hits the news, of course, because it's, she's the first. So it's obviously very unusual. And within that, there's a lot of sort of information, if you wish to pick it apart, around, women, the role in society, the power of female energy versus male energy, the expectations that are put on. And definitely within, as a woman, I know that I feel that I have been expected in corporate business situations to be more patient, to be more tolerant because of my gender, than potentially had I turned up as a man.
It's an interesting one, isn't
because
it?
They expect me to be maternal.
There is an expectation, isn't there, that if a man is aggressive, that is, in some circles, that's seen as being acceptable. I believe aggression is never acceptable.
No, but it's sort of like
you'd be a harpy if you were.
But exactly. It's more sort of like, oh well, he's a man, so it's not such a shock. Whereas if a female presents as being aggressive, it's quite shocking because you don't see it very often. And that's probably down to a lot of conditioning and gender stereotyping and all of this, but also actually down to the biology, because there is a definite, when I had my babies, my then husband thought that he would do the parenting. He had this idea that he could be a stay-at-home dad. And the reality of actually being presented with a baby, at like a really sort of cell biological level, was he wasn't capable of doing it as well as I was.
And I think we've got to be very careful, because there are many men now, a growing number of men, who are taking on the role of the nurturer.
Yeah.
I'd like to almost start with a clean sheet, because I believe, it's my belief, and I have some of this is from experience, that there are many men who have the capacity to nurture, to support, to even the tiniest babies. They can't feed them breast milk, their own, but then the vast majority of women don't continue to feed their babies, if indeed they feed them at all, breastfeed them for very long in our society, for a whole variety of reasons. It's my belief that we, both male and females, have the capacity to nurture. I think they do it in some slightly different ways, but ultimately to be loving and nurturing, I think we have, each of us, male energy, female energy, it's what we use.
Yeah, exactly. So in a business situation, it's interesting to observe that as a female, in a business situation, the expectations are for greater tolerance, greater patience, greater, all of the maternal characteristics that we've talked about, versus a male turning up. Because I agree with you. I think every person has the ability to do nurturing, to do aggression, to do, and some of that might be gender-based, and some of it might just be personality-based.
Environment, experience, there's a whole, it's multi-layered, isn't it?
Yeah.
But for me, I think one of the things that I'd like to explore as part of this is the view that in order to nurture, you have to do things for people. You don't, there's no expectation that they will think for themselves. And I want to take it back to the school situation. I can remember having a discussion with a parent who was still bringing her 7-year-old...
Do you mean an argument?
No, I don't get into arguments. But her 7-year-old son was being pushed to school in a pushchair.
7 years old.
With a bottle of tea. And I mean a bottle with a teat with tea.
Right.
He didn't ever dress himself. He stood there like little Lord Fauntleroy, waiting to be dressed.
Yes.
And we had a discussion about how she was doing her son a huge disservice. And I know, because I've nannied when I was at college and from having a lot of godchildren and nieces and nephews, that when they are small and you are trying to teach them to dress themselves, it's very frustrating.
Oh, God.
Shoes go on the wrong feet, they put things on inside out and upside down.
Yeah.
But that's part of the learning process. Yeah. And for me, that's a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
Because we don't start off as masters at anything, other than crying and pooping.
Yeah.
And we have to learn, don't we, everything within this life.
Yes.
And if you keep people in that safe box where you do everything for them, they don't ever learn.
No.
And so for me, I would say that nurturing is about enabling. It's about giving people the conditions where they can safely learn.
Yes.
Rather than making them dependent upon you in the longer term. Of course, when they're small babies, they are entirely dependent upon you. But the first opportunity for children to eat that chocolate pudding by themselves and get it in their hair and all over the kitchen floor, it's very messy. But how else are they going to learn to feed themselves?
Yes.
And when I said to the mother whose child was still coming in a pushchair, they didn't live that far away, the child had nothing wrong with them at all. At what point are you going to say enough?
Yes.
And you're still going to be pushing him to work or driving him to work at the age of 27. You're doing him a disservice, not only at a personal level, but because other children who can be incredibly cruel.
Oh yeah, it sets him aside.
He is no longer seen as part of the group of children. I'm not about being part of the herd, but it's so unusual for it to sit outside to that extreme that was setting that child up for a very unhappy childhood and a lifetime, if she wasn't careful, of I don't have the capacity to do anything for myself. Now that would be very different if the child had a disability. Even then I'd be saying encourage them to do the very best they can.
Yeah.
But her view of being a good mother was that she was a slave and that child had to have everything done. Now let's fast forward to the work context, because for me there's a lot of parallels. I mean, one of the things that, when I'm doing leadership training, saying to the leaders, the managers, don't do everything. Apologies about the phone. I thought I turned it off, but I haven't. So it'll go to sleep in a minute. That leaders and managers who do everything for their team, who don't allow them to explore, to sometimes get things wrong. Not only are they giving themselves a huge workload, which means that they're never going to be strategic because they're so busy being operational. but their people are not going to grow.
I used to call that learned helplessness.
I think that's a very good title for it. And you have to ask yourself, what's going on in that leader, that manager's mind, that they have so little confidence in their capacity to lead and the confidence in their team to actually get on and do things and to grow, that they are keeping everything small and contained.
Well, I'd be a bit controversial and possibly not very maternal in saying that I think that one of the motivations of people behaving that way is actually a great deal of self-centered selfishness. Because I'm being extreme just to make the point, really, which is, that you definitely get something by keeping people in the infant state.
I think it's multi-layered. I think a lot of people get their sense of self-worth from doing things for other people.
Yeah, I loved the baby phase of my children because they're so helpless, and the desire to protect is really strong. And that's biological hormones and whatever, as well as a general sort of value system. But I love that. But then they get to a certain point when they start to become capable, and it's definitely a sort of you are traumatized by it. But I think nature wants you to be traumatized by it. I think nature wants you.
Isn't it, traumatized?
Well, it is tough, to allow your precious baby to walk, away from you for the first time, and think, okay, I can cope with this, and then the consequences of them falling down, and you have to sort of go through all of this like little, and happily Mother Nature gives us lots of little instances, if you're lucky, to sort of get used to it. But there were many instances when my children were growing up where I definitely had a choice. I could have just carried on doing what I'd always been doing, or allowed them the freedom. Yeah. Now, my view was that if they were capable of doing it, then I wanted to encourage them to do it, because I definitely don't want to be a slave to anyone. And actually, the children themselves fought for it, because their father had a different view. He would get stuck in a particular phase and expect them to still behave. So bath times were classic arguments, really, in our household, because the children wouldn't want him to be scrubbing them, but he thought they were still babies and that he had to.
Yes.
Yeah. So there would be arguments about, I can do it, Daddy, and he'd be like, no, you can't. You won't do it properly. And it's these kind of sort of phrases that get used. Whereas I would say, not to paint myself as a saint, because I'm certainly not that, but I would say, give it a go then.
Yeah.
And then I'd steel myself for the mess and be like, oh gosh, how much shampoo and all of this. But I honestly believe, and I think it's just down to my value system, which is, why would I want to infantilize them any more than they do that for themselves? Because there is an element of laziness that comes in with children. Well, I can't be bothered, can you do it? But why would I want to sort of, teach them?
Actually doing them, I believe.
I don't think I would be. No.
I think, one of the things I encouraged parents, and I had, a lot to do with the parents in my school, and we ran parenting classes. A lot of that is you create, the boundaries which shift as the children get older, but those boundaries have to be really clear, shared and understood. And then, you do everything you can to help that child learn to be independent. Yeah. Because by the time they get out into the real world, it's tough. I think it's quite interesting, the statistics for children who are hurt on the road is a really good example of what I mean. Now, the roads are very busy, and they're particularly busy around where my school was. And if you looked at the local statistics, the number of children who were run over between the age of 11 and 12 was very stark. Now, why was that? Parents brought their children to primary school and delivered them. Yeah. And then suddenly at the age of 11, we sent more children to more schools around the borough than any other school. Yeah. They were suddenly being expected to travel from home to school, traverse roads, get on buses, get on trains. And they didn't have the ingrained understanding of how much threat the roads were. They didn't have that roadside behaviour that in previous years, when, times when children would have taken themselves to school, there may have been accidents. I'm not saying they wouldn't be accident-free, but they learnt in a different way. They learnt, first of all, that their parents, stand by the road, look left, look right, look left again. If it's all clear, cross. But because children were often brought in cars and dropped right by the gate, they didn't have that experience. And then you look at independent learning. I know we've spoken of a time when you were at the cinema and there was a parent doing the child's homework for them,
dictating it to the child. She was teaching the child how to type, and to take dictation.
Yes,
but I'm pretty certain that mother's view was that she was
helping,
not infantilizing her daughter, but in actual fact sort of making her more capable for this high-powered career, whatever she had in her head. But the reality was that all of the ideas, all of the aptitude for, I'll go find out, I'll go see, was all coming from the mother. And the child sat very passively saying, okay, and typing.
Yes.
So in actual fact, she was coaching her for a pretty menial admin role, effectively. Because if that girl doesn't sort of get a bit of a, oh, hang on a minute, in her life, then she's going to continue to expect other people to feed her stuff, and she will complete it, but she won't be the source of it.
The challenge, of course, is how do you get children who are unwilling, who are bored, who are really kicking against doing things like homework, tidying their room, filling the dishwasher, doing little jobs about the house. I mean, the number of parents, I would say, they've got 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old children and say, what do they do to help you?
Yeah.
And then they go off to university and suddenly they've got to cook for themselves, wash for themselves, unless they're going to save up the whole of the term's washing to take home to mum.
Oh, God.
Manage their money. And so part of what we talked about in these parenting groups is make no mean no. Not, well, if you keep on long enough, I'll let it
ask me 50 times and then I'll give in.
But also, age appropriate. Start to make them responsible. Give them little jobs which they are responsible for. And that there are very cause and effect. If you do this, these are the consequences. So if you are pleasant and you help around the house and you do your homework, then we'll do the nice things in life.
The older my children get, the more and more that particular role of consequences is placed upon them by external third parties, and I love it. So secondary school, whereas primary school was very much focused at talking to the parents to get stuff done. Can you help your children? Secondary school, very different. They don't want the parents involved, really. They want them involved, but they want the children to be responsible. So they talk to the children and they get the children to do it. I love it. And I've just recently set up bank accounts for my two.
Very sensible.
So they've got cards now, and there's limits, and obviously the bank knows what their age is, so they're not giving them credit or anything like that. But already the pair of them have forgotten their PIN number. And now I just say, oh, well, we'll have to go into the bank, and then I say, well, you have to talk to the bank, and the bank says, why did you forget your PIN number? If you keep forgetting your PIN number, then this is going to happen. I love it, because I just sit back and say, good. Right, now society is helping motherhood, because society is saying this is not how we actually like to behave. If we want a successful life, this is the easier way.
One of the things I encourage parents to do, again, age appropriate, is give children a budget and be very clear about what that budget was meant to pay for. And it came out of a conversation with a parent who was on her own, who had very limited money, who was being put under huge pressure by her two boys. One who only wanted designer shampoo and stuff, and the other who was into Pokemon cards. Now, the older boy was at secondary school, I think he was about 13, the younger boy was about 9. And so I said, why don't you give them a budget? Different for both boys. And so the older boy had a budget, and he had to buy all of his own toiletries out of it. It included his dinner money. And But he had this list of all of the things that he had to take out of his money.
Yeah.
Suggest she gave it him in cash.
Yeah.
Because then it's real.
Yes.
A little bit had to go into savings.
Yeah.
A little bit had to be for charity.
Yeah.
And then he had to manage the rest. So partway through the first week, they went shopping. And she said, go and pick up your shampoo. And he looked at the price of the designer shampoo. And he looked at the price of the budget shampoo. Yeah. And he picked budget shampoo. And she said to him, interesting choice. He said, oh, well, I want to do such and such with my money.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, the little one on the Pokemon cards, again, he had a budget. He was expected to do less with his budget, but his budget was less. When it came to buying Pokemon cards, he became very, very discerning about what he wanted. Those children had learned an incredibly good life lesson.
The value of money. The
value and how to manage it.
Yes.
But it was done, it's no good doing this in a foggy way. It has to be very, very clear parameters. And then you have to be quite tough. When they say, I've run out of money, can you lend me some?
I charge my interest.
Do you? How much? Are you a rackman in this?
I generally speaking just sort of round it up to do some easy maths. And then when they say, oh no, it's only this, that, and I say, no, that's the bank charging you interest for for processing the admin of lending you the money, and also for the loss of my use of that money whilst you've got it.
Yes.
Well, that's what the bank does.
And I think if children understood compound interest on credit cards, that would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
So let's just take it back to Mother's Day, because Mother's Day is a universal opportunity to say thank you.
Yes.
And, you know, I see a lot of clients who have a very challenging relationship with their mothers.
Yes. Yeah.
Because their mothers don't or haven't parented them in exactly the way that they think they ought to be. And they're not sure whether their criticism comes from a place of not liking or not loving them.
Yes.
My experience is generally that parents are doing the best they can.
Yeah.
And I would urge anybody who's listening to this, whether you're listening to live or the recording, is, you know, your parents, both of them, have given you life. And they've got you to where you are. And for that, however they are, it's something to be grateful for. But to recognise that parents are people and that they come with their own baggage and their own, all of their own challenges, and that you as their child can take this one day in the year. And I want to take that back. I don't think it should be one day. I think appreciating people and saying thank you and recognising the contribution they make should be a 365 and 366 day leap year thing.
Yes. Yeah.
But it is nice to make that little extra effort on Mother's Day and say thank you.
It's a lovely tradition coming out of the of harder times when, as relatively young people, you weren't allowed, weren't capable of living with your mother for a long time because you had to go off into service, wasn't it? So it was the time when you could actually go home and have a little bit of
time,
maternal love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that maternal love, I think we all, men and women, have the capacity to nurture, to love, to support, which may be seen as the mothering instinct. I think it's much more about the loving of people.
Yes.
Our mothers give us life. They nurture us within their bodies for 9 months. And for that, I believe they are very special. And that should be recognised. So this Mothering Sunday, take the opportunity to, if your mum are alive, to say thank you for being my mum. And if your mother has passed, to say thank you and send messages of love to wherever they may be, and to recognise that they have given you this amazing opportunity called life. Your life is a journey and an opportunity to learn. And if relationships are strained between your mum and you, perhaps it's time to forgive and to start to create a different relationship with them based on recognising that they are human and that
they have done one of the toughest jobs known on the planet.
Absolutely. So enjoy Mothering Sunday, whatever you're doing, and love to know your comments, whether you agree with the things that we put forward today, how you feel about your mum, and what you believe in terms of leadership is a nurturing role. So love to hear all of those things. There's lots of free resources on the website, genuinely-and the word you.com. It's genuinely-you.com. You can find all our genuine chats, lots and lots of different themes. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to the next time. Take care now. Bye-bye.